So Fallout 76 got a new update. If you're on PC, it should be around 36 megabytes, while consoles it should have been about 3 gigabytes. Definitely the smallest of the bunch thus far. And more or less in this video, what I want to look at is what we found out about this update, some of the secret or lack of changes that have been made from it, and some of the most prominent changes that you're probably going to notice. Even beyond that, there's a few other anecdotal stories that I do want to share towards the end of this one though, that I think you guys will find pretty interesting, one of them having somewhat to do with Fallout 76's DLC plans. We got the patch notes for this update late last week, and if you guys missed them, I will have a link down below so you could get a pretty good idea of what was actually changed. We didn't get an updated version of these. It seems like those original patch notes still do apply, and some of the major changes that you will notice are such as your stash limit being increased. That's probably the biggest change. So now when you go to your stash, rather than having 400 weight, you're actually going to have 600 weight. Bethesda has mentioned in the past that right now this is going to be a conservative increase, to quote them directly, meaning that in the future, if the server stability is maintained, they may increase this further. But outside of that, there was actually several balance changes, and one of the ones I specifically wanted to look at was the nerf to NPC experience. If you watch my videos or subscribe, I mean you can now also, you would have known this change was coming and that you should have done your NPC farming yesterday or prior, and it actually is a fairly big change. Bethesda simply listed it as XP rewards for killing high-level creatures have been reduced. I tested this at the Monster Mash event in Watoga because it's a very popular spot for farming legendaries and also just farming levels. In previous versions of the game, I was getting 103 experience for taking down level 32 enemies during this event. On the latest build of the game, I'm only getting 56 experience, so that's a pretty big decrease. It's actually a 45% decrease on experience gained. Something interesting to point out though, it's not exactly 45%. If you actually do the math, it's 45.631 and then a bunch of other decimals. So this may indicate that maybe this is different for different creatures or even at different levels. So maybe it gets harsher at higher levels, maybe it's easier at lower levels, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised though if there's some kind of other variable, not just the level of the NPC affecting how much experience you do gain. The next one I was actually kind of curious about. Bethesda lists that bosses fix an issue affecting instance boss loot. Players should now correctly receive 2 to 4 items per boss depending on the creature's difficulty and level. So I don't really know what a boss is considered in this game. Maybe that's only legendary enemies. I tried taking down a Scorch Beast because that was definitely one of my biggest complaints, and the loot still sucked. The armor piece that did drop on it was 10 levels below me and 20 levels below the Scorch Beast level, so it definitely hasn't been improved, or at the very least I got really unlucky. They also mentioned how automatic weapons would now actually have quite a considerable buff at 20% across the board for pretty much everything, and you can feel it somewhat, especially with some of the higher end automatic weapons. I felt like I could really notice it while using them, but in all honesty it still didn't feel like a game changer. I would still be much more likely to use a single fire weapon because the damage difference still is quite big. That was the bulk of the new features added or changes. If you actually go into the Atomic Shop, you'll find a bunch of new additions to that also, if that's your kind of thing. A couple of them are kind of cool, but a lot of them are really freaking expensive for what they add in. Watch my past video on this if you want to know my full opinion about the Atomic Shop, but it seems like there's several unintended consequences of this update, such as crashing and bugs. So one of the most notable of these new bugs, it seems like the Excavator Power Armor, which previously gave you plus 100 carry weight when you had all pieces equipped, no longer actually does that. For some people, it was working fine for me, but several people online are reporting that it's glitched out for them. Bethesda actually gave their own response to this. Basically just take off all the pieces, log out, log back in, and then it will work again. I don't know if that's going to solve it over the long term, if you do that once and it always works, or if you technically have to do this every time you launch the game. Hopefully this is something they'll patch quickly with like a bug fix, not something that we have to wait a full another week for. But outside of that, there's also a ton of users reporting a crash to desktop when loading the game. As of right now, it seems like it's only on PC. I don't know what the cause is. I don't think anyone really knows what the cause is. It seems like it's almost as widespread as the carry weight issue, but it doesn't seem like Bethesda has actually given an official response to this one or even acknowledged its existence. Although a lot of the community managers are pretty active on the subreddit nowadays, so I wouldn't be surprised if they at least reply to it or it is on their radar, especially considering the amount of posts on this topic. As far as exploit fixing goes, it seems like a couple did get fixed, but other ones didn't get fixed. So the trap trap exploit where you could disarm traps over and over again was fixed, but things like the carry weight exploit and even some of the infinite damage exploits have not been fixed as of right now. As far as some of the other miscellaneous changes, there was actually the spot where previously I couldn't place my camp down. Now when I try and place it down, it works successfully. They mentioned some other fixes to camp, so it seems like there definitely have been improvements in that regard. But as far as just general stability goes, I still notice lag, I still notice glitching. It's not like this is a bug-free game suddenly. As far as other hidden content behind the scenes, there actually was some new pictures as to what's going to be coming in the Atomic Shop. So in all likelihood, some Christmas stuff is probably on the way. It obviously is approaching that season, so I wouldn't be surprised in the next update or two if that's something we do get. But speaking of Christmas stuff, late last night, Bethesda actually released the second edition of their Inside the Vault of articles. Basically, on a weekly basis, they release these articles talking about some of the up-and-coming changes to the game and when we can expect future patches and what's going to be in them. This article very much so feels like one of those things that they just felt the need to post while it doesn't actually include all that much new information, like one of those things they need to check off their to-do list today. Either way, the only new information we get, stuff that hasn't been repeated in other articles, is that a patch is coming on December 18th. They cite that it'll continue to focus on stability and other concerns raised by the community. What that means, I don't know. They've kind of said that in every single patch at this point. They also say that we're excited to announce that starting in early 2019, we plan to release a variety of in-game events that will take place over a course of a week. So I'm not really sure what that's going to entail. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some holiday-themed events, maybe for the new year, or even just some wintry-themed events. They go on to say that these events will be different every time and will often provide a small buff or create an interesting twist on normal gameplay. That definitely sounds pretty interesting. I could see a lot of people just doing those events, maybe farming unique items that could come from them. That's something I've suspected Bethesda doing for a while now. In the past, they've also kind of mentioned that something they may do is actually release additional perk cards, and that would be kind of a cool feature if by doing some of these events you get like a holiday themed perk card or maybe an exclusive skin that you could only get as a result of the season. A lot of other games do that, and I wouldn't be surprised if Vault 76 follows suit. All in all though, it seems like that's pretty much it for this update. It came with a combination of some new features, some bug fixes, some new bugs, and a look at what some of the future content is going to be. If you guys enjoy the content, you can leave a like or subscribe, but with that, I hope to see you all next time. Later.